Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday, May 9th meeting of the La Crosse Common Council. I will note that all council members are present. For those who are able, please join me in standing for our Pledge of Allegiance, followed by our invocation. And tonight's invocation is from Pastor Cale Clemerson from New Beginnings Christian Fellowship.
Creator God, we thank you that we can gather here and manage what you have given us to manage. We thank you for every servant that is here in this room. I ask that you would bless them with wisdom, with understanding. God, that you would just grant them peace at the decisions that are made here. We thank you for all that they oversee and this great community that we have. Thank you for the blessing that it is. In Jesus' name and authority, amen.
Thank you. On to council business. The first item that we have is the council member selection to the executive committee, and this is done by a vote of the majority of the council. So I would entertain nominations for a council member to serve on the executive committee. Yes, Council Member Olson.
I would like to nominate Councilmember Barb Jansen for the position, please.
Is there a second to that nomination? I heard a motion and a second by the council president to nominate Barb Jansen. Are there any other nominations to the executive committee? Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? I see no other nominations, so I would, we'll get the motion up here on the floor or up on the board for Barb Jansen to serve as the executive committee member. And when that's ready, please go ahead and cast your vote. And that motion passes by a unanimous vote. Barb Jansen is selected to serve as the council member appointment on the executive committee. All right, next we move on to approval of the minutes of our April 11th regular meeting and the April 16th adjourned and organizational meeting. I see a motion has been made by Council Member Richmond, seconded by Council Member Weaver to approve. Any discussion on the minutes from any of those meetings? I see no request to speak, so please go ahead and cast your vote. That motion carries 13-0. The minutes for those meetings are approved. Next, we have items for notices and discussion. If you would like to share something under this topic, under notices or discussion, please hit your request to speak button and I will recognize you to speak. Councilmember Ostrom, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. First off, I'd like to start by thanking Caroline Gregerson and the entire planning department, as far as I can tell, for the Family Fun Night. It is due to end in about a half an hour in PPH at Polk Park. They did, again, a wonderful job, and there was tremendous participation by the neighborhood, so thank you very much for doing a wonderful job. Also, I'd like to mention that this is part of Community Development Week. It ends tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be an open house and walking tour of the La Crosse Promise eligible homes. It starts at 811 6th Street South from 11 until 2 p.m. So this is an opportunity to see if people would be interested in investing in PPH and Washburn. Also, I'd like to mention Gunderson Health System, who has been very helpful to us, very good neighbors to the Powell Polk Hamilton neighborhood. They have been in talks with Wafer, and it looks like there'll be a mobile pantry stopping at the Southside Neighborhood Center each month. They're going to try it for 3 months, and that is also very good news. We have a lot of hungry people in our neighborhood. And also, I'm happy to announce that once again we will have a farmers market at 6th and Farnham, and starting in June, and it'll be every Thursday from 3 to 6. So we have a lot of good news to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to share? Yes, Councilmember Richmond, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you have not met our interim airport airport director, he is in the audience, Mr. Bob O'Brien. If you get a chance, stop out at the airport and have a little tour with Mr. O'Brien, and that would be great. But we're happy to have him here temporarily, so until we can get a permanent position filled. So we're working on that, but in the meantime, Mr. O'Brien's doing a terrific job out there. So anyway, maybe you can wave, Bob, and you have met most of the council members, so I appreciate that. So thanks for coming.
Thank you. Anyone else with an item under notices or discussion? I see no others. I want to just remind folks and invite the community and council members on Wednesday, May 22nd. It's basically all day. I believe it starts at 8 a.m. until 2 p.m. at the Municipal Service Center. That's our Public Works open house. So there's your opportunity to go check out all of the various city operations, and almost all of the departments I think are represented with equipment and staff to answer questions. It's a good chance to learn about things like leaf pickup and filling potholes and MTU and fire engines and police cars, and the list goes on and on. So please, if you're available, the staff puts on a wonderful show. There's a lot of school groups and things that go through there that day, but you are all cordially invited. So with that, I move on to our Common Council matters. The first item is 19-0312. It's a resolution authorizing the 2019 action plan and funding allocation in connection with CDBG and home programs, and this is a reconsideration by Councilmember Phil Ostrom. I know that we are looking for an amendment, so I would recognize, and I see there's a motion to reconsider by Councilmember Ostrom, seconded by Councilmember Newmeister. Councilmember Ostrom, did you want to say anything to that? I know that the amendment is in Legistar, so anything to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. It's a matter that came through the Community Development Committee, and part of the reason this had to be amended is Common Bond failed to receive a tax credit benefit from WIDA. So we had to withdraw those funds that we had promised because we have to show results for our money. So instead, it's going into the Rivoli Theater Lofts apartment project. We also, in error, entered the wrong dollar amount. The allocation should be $300,000 instead of $395,000. The other $95,000 will be going into small business development revolving loan funds. So this is mainly a clerical correction.
Thank you. Any questions about that? So this first vote is to reconsider the item, so please go ahead and cast your vote, and then we'll take a vote on the amendment. Okay, so the reconsideration vote passes by a vote of 13-0. So now I would entertain a motion to adopt this item as amended, and I see a motion has been made by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Weaver. Any discussion on that? I see no discussion. Please go ahead and cast your vote. And that motion passes by a vote of 13-0. Are we ready to move on to the next item, or do I need to take a vote on approving that as amended? Okay, so that was for the amendment. I apologize, I want to clarify. That was for the amendment. This vote is to approve as amended, and a motion has been made by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion carries 13-0. That item as amended is approved. We move on to item number 19-0454, an amended resolution approving a reclassification of the director of the La Crosse Regional Airport position. This is a reconsideration by Councilmember Richmond, and I see a motion has been made to reconsider by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Newmeister, and I would recognize Councilmember Richmond perhaps just to give a brief explanation.
Thank you, Your Honor. There was an error on the salary range, and I need an amendment on there after the reconsideration vote.
Oh, okay.
So, thank you.
So let's go ahead and take the vote to reconsider. Please cast your vote on that motion. That motion to reconsider passes by a vote of 13-0, and then I would look for a motion to amend, and that amendment is in Legistar. So a motion has been made by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom. Are there any questions on that amendment? I see no request to speak, so please go ahead and cast your vote. Again, the motion is to approve that amended and corrected salary range. Motion carries by a vote of 13-0. The amendment is approved. I see a motion has been made by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Richmond, to approve as amended. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please cast your vote. Again, the motion is to approve as amended. Motion passes by a vote of 13-0. That item is approved. We move on to item number 19-0667, a resolution approving the April 2019 engineering estimates. A motion has been made by Councilmember Weaver, seconded by Councilmember Richmond, to adopt. Any discussion on the estimates for the month? I see no request to speak. Please cast your vote. Motion is to approve. The motion passes by a vote of 13-0. That item is adopted. We move on to item 19-0666, resolution approving the May 2019 engineering estimates. Motion has been made by Councilmember Christian, seconded by Councilmember Richmond, to adopt. Any discussion? Seeing there is no discussion, please go ahead and cast your vote. Motion passes by a vote of 13-0. That item is adopted. Next item, 19-0681, a resolution approving the 2019 bills paid in May of 2019. A motion has been made by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Christians, to adopt. Any discussion on the bills for the month? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. Motion the vote is 13-0 in favor. That item is adopted. We move on next to appointments by the mayor, item 19-0674, to the Animal Control Governing Board, Scott Newmeister, to the Aviation Board, Andrea Richmond, to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Larry Slesnikow, Jeff Finney, Virginia Lair, Jill Miller, Robert Young, and Jason Melby, to the Boundary Agreement Task Force, Philip Ostrom, Martin Gall, Douglas Happel, to the City of La Crosse Arts Board, Roger Christians, to the City Plan Commission, Scott Newmeister and Christine Kalo, to the Community Development Committee, Philip Ostrom, Barb Jansen, Mike Lemon, Linda Lee, Adam Hatfield, and Elaine Yeager, to the EMS Contract Negotiating Committee, Andrea Richmond and Philip Ostrom, to the Floodplain Advisory Committee, Richard Becker, to the Heritage Preservation Committee, Christine Kalo, to the Housing Authority, Peter Sainer, to the International Committee, Gary Podesky, to the Joint Board of Harbor Commissioners, Scott Newmeister and Jerome Gunnerson, to the La Crosse County Convention and Visitors Bureau, Scott Newmeister, to the La Crosse Center Board, Scott Newmeister, Philip Addis, Nancy Flottmeyer, and Danielle Petersley, to the La Crosse Historic and Cultural Museum Planning Task Force, Gary Podesky, to the Library Board, Gary Podesky, to the Municipal Transit Utility Board, Justice Weaver, to the Neighborhood Revitalization Commission, Larry Slesnikow, Linda Lee, Janet Allen, and Christopher Woodard, To the Public Safety Communications Board, Douglas Happel. To the Redevelopment Authority, Andrea Richmond, and I believe that one calls, we need to call that one out, don't we, for a 4/5 vote, I believe. I'm looking at the clerk. Yeah, so we'll do that one separately. To the Room Tax Commission, Gary Podesky and Nick Weber. To the South Branch Library Senior Center Steering Committee, Paul Menninger and Philip Ostrom. And to the Sustainable Lacrosse Commission, Larry Sleznikow. A motion to confirm has been made by Councilmember Podesky, seconded by Councilmember Weaver. Any discussion? And this includes all of those except for the Redevelopment Authority, which we'll do a separate vote on. Any discussion? Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion is to confirm those appointments. The motion and the vote is 13-0. That motion passes, so I would entertain a motion to appoint Councilmember Richmond to the Redevelopment Authority, and I see a motion has been made by Councilmember Newmeister, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to confirm. Any discussion? Please go ahead and cast your vote. Again, this requires a supermajority. The vote is unanimous, and that motion is adopted. Those appointments are confirmed. We move on to the suspension of Council Rule 8 for the following items, which does require a 2/3 vote, and that is, those are items 19-0606, 19-0607, 19-0647, and 19-0688. A motion has been made by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Weaver to approve. Please go ahead and cast your vote to suspend the rule. And this does require a 2/3 vote. The vote is 13-0. That motion passes. The rule is suspended for those 4 items. We move on to report of bids recommended to be adopted. The first up is 19-0358, report of bids and resolution awarding contract to Pember Companies, Inc. in the amount of $379,468 for the Badger Hickey Park project. Motion has been made by Councilmember Weaver, seconded by Councilmember Richmond to adopt. Any discussion? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. Again, the motion is to adopt the bid and resolution. Motion carries by a vote of 13-0. That item is adopted. Next is item 19-0547, report of bids and resolution awarding contract to Gerke Excavating, Inc. in the amount of $155,009.75 for the 2019 miscellaneous sewer repairs. A motion has been made by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Jansen to adopt. Any discussion? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. Motion is to adopt. That motion passes by a vote of 13-0. Next, we move on to the report of bids to be rejected. And the first up is item 19-0546, which is a report of bids for the 2019 RRFB's rebid project. The recommendation from the Director of Engineering and Public Works is to reject all bids as being over budget. A motion has been made by Councilmember Ostrom, seconded by Councilmember Weaver to reject. Any discussion? And maybe if I could just ask Randy real quick, what's our plan going forward on these?
On the rectangular rapid flashing beacon would be to redesign it and do the painting in-house. The painting came in way over budget, and the same subcontractor submitted the same sub bid to the general contractors, so every one of the bids was over budget. So we're going to do the painting in-house with street department staff and bid out the remainder of it.
Thank you. Any discussion? The motion on the floor is to reject. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The vote is 13-0. That bid is rejected. We move on to item number 19-0549, report of bids for the La Crosse Municipal Boat Harbor Toilet and Shower Building. And again, the recommendation by the Director of Engineering and Public Works is to reject all bids as being over budget. A motion has been made by Councilmember Ostrom, seconded by Councilmember Newmeister to reject. And I would ask Randy again, do we have a plan B?
The plan B is to go back to the architects and have them redesign with a lesser quality of materials and possibly a different size bathroom, and possibly not heating it for winter use. So I'm working with the park department and the architect to rescope the project and try to get it back under where the budget is, which is about $350,000.
Thank you. Any discussion? The motion is to reject. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The vote is 13-0. That report for those bids is rejected. We move on to item with no recommendation, and that's item 19-0688. It's a resolution approving a separation agreement, waiver, and release between the City of La Crosse and Frank Devine. And if it's okay and acceptable, this was basically forwarded to the full council with no recommendation, and we will need a closed session, so we'll hold this one until the very end after we dispatch with all the other business, if that's okay. I see nodding heads. So I'm going to then move on to the items recommended to be adopted. And the first up is item 19-0611, an ordinance to create section 34-73 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of La Crosse prohibiting smoking in city parks. The vote out of the Judiciary and Administration Committee was 4-1 in favor. So this is recommended to be adopted. I see a motion has been made by Councilmember Ostrom, seconded by Councilmember Weaver to adopt, and I would recognize Councilmember Podeski to speak.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a few questions for Mr. Odegaard, please. Thanks, Jay. There were some questions I really didn't think of that night at J&A that I'm kind of curious about. Have you talked to like Riverfest and Moon Tunes and how these people feel about it? And do you foresee any problems as far as if they put in a request? I'm just guessing with music and beer, a lot of people are going to want to have some cigarettes at Moon Tunes or Riverfest.
Yeah, so the idea, Councilmember Podeski, with the special events in the park, they have to come before the Board of Park Commissioners for approval for those events regardless. At that time, they will be able to seek an ulterior situation for their specific event. Also, those events are tasked with doing all the cleanup of the park after their event. So, we really want to give them the opportunity.
Well, I guess the main reason this is coming about is mainly just because of cleanup then?
Well, I've kind of said before that there's really three phases to this. One is obviously the financial benefit of us, not having to put labor hours towards cleaning up the cigarette butts that are left behind. Another one is just the environmental benefit of not having these cigarette butts. And obviously we don't get them all, especially as we move forward with a lot of our parks being mowed by contractors. A lot of these cigarette butts are just getting chopped up in the mowers and shot into the curb and gutters, and they're going into the stormwater. So, and lastly is the social impact of not allowing cigarette smoke or smoke in general, really focusing on the playground areas of our parks.
Is there a reason we just couldn't have this around the playground areas then?
That is, that's an option that we considered. And as I have discussed in front of the park board, one of the things that we're looking at is coming back after a year and looking to see what is the feedback with the public input session that we had the other day with 125 plus people attend. We didn't have one complaint. I have taken now 3 complaints via phone calls. I haven't got word if any of the council members have received any complaints, but one of the things that we look at is the other two, the environmental and the financial aspect, and whether there's a playground or not, we still have to pick them up or they're still getting chewed up by the mowers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Councilmember Kalo.
Thank you. Actually, I have one more question for you. I guess, I'm wondering about enforcement. How is this going to be enforced?
Well, we have had conversations with the police department. This will be a city ordinance. It'll be signed at all of the different parks. It'll be enforced the same as our no alcohol within 1,000 feet of playground structures, or no camping. Any of the other ordinances that follow suit to the parks. And so far, talking with multiple officers in the police department and Chief Tischer, they're in support of this as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak or has a question for our Parks and Forestry Director? Okay, I don't see any other questions or any other requests to speak. The motion on the floor is to adopt. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion passes by a vote of 9-4. The 4 no votes are Newmeister, Kalo, Podeski, and Gall. So the motion passes. That ordinance is adopted. Next, we move on to item 19-0584, which is a resolution appropriating additional funds for the La Crosse River Marsh lead contamination project. And because this is utilizing reserve funds, this does require a 2/3 vote tonight. A motion has been made by Councilmember Jansen, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom to adopt. Any discussion on this? I see no request to speak. Please go ahead and cast your vote. 2/3 is required. Motion carries by a vote of 13-0. That item is adopted. We are on to the consent agenda. If you have an item that you would like held out for a separate vote, please hit your request to speak button, and I will recognize you so that we can take action on that individual item. I would recognize Councilmember Kalo.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to hold out 19-0574, please. And I would like to ask for a 30-day referral.
Okay, so we have item 19-0574, which is an amended ordinance to amend various sections of Chapter 10, Article 10 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of La Crosse regarding outdoor food stands and mobile food units. And is that a motion you're making to refer for that for 30 days? Yes, I see a motion has been made by Councilmember Kalo, seconded by Councilmember Weaver to refer. And this is a 30-day referral. Any discussion on that? I would recognize Councilmember Ostrom.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just wondering why you wish to have this referred.
After a lot of discussion and work that went on in the past year on this, since the meeting last week, there were some concerns about the ordinance yet, and Robin Moses from DMI had asked that it be referred, as well as several other members of the Restaurant Association. So we thought that to clean it up and get it right, we should refer it for 30 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion or questions? I see no request to speak. The motion on the floor is to refer for 30 days. Please go ahead and cast your vote. Motion passes by a vote of 13-0. That item is referred. Any other items that we would like a separate vote on? Any other items? I heard a motion by Councilmember Richmond, seconded by Councilmember Olson to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion carries. The consent agenda is adopted, and we will go back to item number 19-0688. It's a resolution approving a separation agreement waiver and release between the City of La Crosse and Frank Devine. And I would entertain a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stats Section 19.85(1)(c) for personnel issues. And I see a motion has been made by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Ostrom, to convene into closed session pursuant to that statute. Please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion carries 13-0, so we are going to convene into closed session. We will come back into open session if there is a vote on this matter, as well as to adjourn. So we'll see folks in just a little bit. Thank you. Okay, we are back into open session, and I see a motion has been made by Council President Gall, seconded by Councilmember Newmeister, to adopt the resolution approving the separation agreement waiver and release between the City of La Crosse and Frank Devine. Is there any discussion? I see no request to speak, so please go ahead and cast your vote. The motion passes by a vote of 13-0. That item is adopted. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? I heard a motion by Councilmember Olson, seconded by Councilmember Weaver, to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening.